I don't really know when the story truly began. Sometimes I think it started the day my husband died, because that's when everything in my life shifted off its axis. Other times I think it started much earlier, with the small choices we made without realizing how they would ripple into the future. And if I'm being very honest, on my more cynical days, I think it started the first time I told my son, "Don't worry about me, I'll be fine," and actually meant it. My name is Margaret. I'm 68 years old. And I live alone in the same small house where I raised my son. It has 3 bedrooms, a creaky staircase, and a back garden that always looks a little neglected no matter how much I fuss with it. The paint is peeling on the back fence, and the front door sticks if you try to slam it, which, in a way, is a blessing. It keeps arguments from ending too dramatically. I start most mornings the same way. I put the kettle on, stand at the kitchen window, and wait for the water to boil while I look out at the yard. The apple tree my husband planted when Daniel was born is still there, though it's more branch than fruit these days. There's a bird feeder he made from an old tin, hanging crookedly on one side. The world moves slowly from that window. I like it that way. That morning was like any other. The sky was a soft, washed-out blue. The kettle sang. I poured my tea, sat at the table, and opened the small notebook where I pretend to plan my day. I wrote down things like buy milk and wash sheets. Small anchors to tie myself to the hours ahead. I was underlining call dentist when my phone buzzed. It was Daniel. Just seeing his name light up the screen does something to my chest. My heart lifts a little and then tightens, because our conversations rarely sit somewhere comfortable. They are either rushed and shallow, or deep in a way that leaves me uneasy. "Hi, Mum," he said when I picked up. His voice sounded bright, almost too bright, like he was forcing cheerfulness into it. "Morning, love," I answered. "Everything all right?" Yeah, everything's fine. "Listen, are you busy today?" I looked around at my empty kitchen, at the tea steaming faintly in front of me. "No," I said, "not especially." "Good. I was thinking of stopping by. Thought we could talk about a few things. Maybe around lunch?" Whenever someone says we need to talk about a few things, it is never about how lovely the weather is or how good the apples were last year. "Still," I said, "of course. I'll make something. Do you want?" "Mum," he cut in gently, "no need to cook. We won't stay long. Just a chat." "Oh," I swallowed. "All right. I'll put the kettle on, then." He laughed. "You always do." We said our goodbyes, and I sat for a moment, staring at the phone on the table. I tried not to read too much into it. Daniel had been more present in my life over the past few months. Not in the old way, not in the popping round unannounced with takeaway or sitting on the sofa with me to watch some silly show. But he called more often, asked more questions. How was I managing with the bills? Did I need anything fixed around the house? How was my back? I had attributed it to guilt after his father's death and perhaps a bit of maturity. He had always been ambitious, my son. Always moving towards something, driven by an invisible motor. Even as a boy, he was the type who needed to win, to be the best, to prove something. I don't know exactly to whom. Maybe to himself. He was like that at school. Then at university, then at work. Then with women, too, eventually. When he told me about Olivia, his new wife, he did it over dinner at a restaurant that was much too expensive for my taste. He had insisted on paying and waved away my objections with a frustrated smile. "Mum, for God's sake. I make good money. Let me treat you." The place had low lighting and strange food that came on flat stones instead of plates. Olivia arrived 10 minutes late, apologizing as if she'd just returned from running a country. "So sorry," she said, kissing the air near my cheek. She smelled like something floral and sharp. The traffic was just insane, and then my client. Anyway, I'm here now. She was younger than Daniel by 9 years, which, at first, I didn't think much about. She was beautiful in a polished, intentional way, sleek hair, perfect nails, clothes that looked like they belonged in a magazine. When she smiled, it was always with her mouth, never with her eyes. "Your mother looks so young," she said, turning to him as if I wasn't there. "You didn't tell me she was so elegant." It was the kind of compliment that balances on the edge of an insult. I ignored the clumsiness of it because I wanted to like her. Because Daniel seemed to like her so much. They got married in a small ceremony 6 months later. I wore a blue dress that I'd taken in at the waist myself, and a little hat with a net that made me feel like someone from the old films my husband used to love. Daniel looked handsome in his suit. Nervous in a way I hadn't seen since he was a teenager. Olivia looked perfect, of course. Everything about the wedding was perfect: the music, the menu, the photographs. Nothing was out of place. When they danced their first dance, I remember thinking how beautiful they were, how modern, how much more polished their life would be than mine and Matthew's had ever been. And for a brief moment, I was glad. I thought, he's going to be taken care of. He has someone. I didn't know then that the someone he'd chosen didn't want to take care of him at all. Only to be carried. ... The doorbell rang at exactly 12:15 on the day Daniel said he'd come over. Punctuality is another thing he inherited from his father. I wiped my hands on my apron, even though they weren't wet, and went to open the door. He was alone. I tried not to let my relief show on my face. Olivia had a way of making me feel as if I were failing some invisible test every time we were in the same room. Like I had to justify my existence. "Hi, Mum," Daniel said, leaning in to kiss my cheek. He looked tired, little lines etched around his mouth that hadn't been there a year ago. "Hello, love. Come in, come in. It's a bit chilly out." He stepped into the hallway, glancing around as if the house might have changed since his last visit. It hadn't. The same framed photos on the wall, the same coat rack, the same old rug that didn't quite lie flat. I made tea. Of course I made tea. It's what I do when I don't know what else to do. We sat at the kitchen table. He cradled the mug in his hands. Not drinking from it, just turning it slowly as if he could warm himself through his palms. "So," I said eventually. "You said you wanted to talk?" He took a breath, then another. "The thing is, Mum, things have been a bit tight lately." I nodded, though I didn't really know what he meant yet. "At work?" I asked. "Not exactly. Work is fine," he said. "But you know the house we bought, and with the wedding, and Olivia's, well, lifestyle. It all adds up. And there's some debt from before. And," he waved a hand, as if pushing away a cloud of words. "It's just a lot. Money. It always comes back to money." "I see," I said. "Well, I'm sorry to hear that. But you're managing?" He smiled without humor. "That's the thing. We're sort of, barely managing. And Olivia, she deserves certain things. She's used to a certain standard of living." The words sat in the air between us like something heavy and unpleasant. "And you?" I asked quietly. "What do you deserve?" He blinked, caught off guard by the question. I don't know," he said. "I haven't really thought about it like that." Of course he hadn't. Daniel had always measured his worth by what he could provide for others, by how high he could climb. Now it seemed he was still climbing, but the ladder was leaning against someone else's wall. He took another breath. "Mum, I wanted to talk to you about your situation. Financially, I mean, my situation." He said it in the same tone he might use to talk about a leaky roof. "I'm fine," I answered automatically. "I have the pension, and there's what your father and I saved. It's not a fortune, but it's enough for me." "That's what I wanted to discuss," he said carefully. "About the savings." I felt something in my stomach tighten. "What about them? Have you thought about, I don't know, doing something smarter with them? Investing? Putting them somewhere they can grow instead of just sitting in an account?" I nearly laughed. The idea of me investing anything beyond the occasional jar of jam on discount was almost comical. "At my age?" I said. "Daniel, I don't need them to grow. I just need them to be there when I need them." He hesitated. "Right, of course. It's just that, money loses value when it sits. With inflation and everything, you could actually end up with less, in a way." I looked at him over the rim of my cup. "And what are you suggesting?" He looked down at his hands. "I was thinking, maybe I could help manage them. Move them into better accounts. Help you get more out of them. I mean, I work with numbers all the time. I know the market. You shouldn't have to worry about these things." I stirred my tea, though I hadn't put sugar in it. The spoon clinked softly against the porcelain. "Your father and I worried about those things together for 40 years, I said. "We worried about them when we couldn't afford new tires for the car, and when the washing machine broke, and when your school trip cost more than we expected. We put money aside for emergencies and for old age. This is old age, Daniel. This is the emergency. I'm not saying you should give it all to me," he rushed on. Just let me have access. Joint accounts. Transfers. I can make it work harder for you. For us. There it was. The slip. For you. For us. I heard the echo of his words and said nothing. My silence made him nervous. Mom, you trust me, don't you? He asked. Of all the questions in the world, that one is the cruelest when it comes from your child. How do you answer it? Do you say, yes, but you're scaring me? Do you say, no, and watch his face break? I chose the coward's path. I don't know enough about these things, I said slowly. Your father always handled the bigger decisions. I don't understand what you're proposing. I'm proposing that I help you, he said. That I take some of this off your plate. You don't like dealing with the bank anyway. This way you don't have to worry. I'll make sure everything is taken care of. You can just live. It was a good speech. If I didn't know him, I might have believed every word. And the thing is, part of me did. Not because he sounded convincing, but because I wanted to believe that my son's first priority was my well-being, not his lifestyle. Let me think about it, I said. His shoulders tensed, almost imperceptibly. Sure, he replied. Think about it, but don't overthink, okay? Sometimes opportunities pass if you hesitate too long. It sounded like something he'd picked up from one of those motivational books. The kind with glossy covers and promises. We changed the subject. Eventually. Talked about the weather, the neighbor's noisy dog, something he'd watched on television. But the conversation kept looping back in my mind to that one phrase, joint accounts. Access. For us. After he left, I went into the bedroom and opened the drawer of my bedside table. At the bottom, under old letters and a pair of glasses I no longer used, was the thin folder with our financial documents. Bank statements, insurance papers, notes in my husband's careful handwriting. Always keep some aside. Maggie, he used to say. You never know what life will throw at you. I ran my hand along the edge of the folder and felt a chill, though the room wasn't cold. Over the next few weeks, Daniel called more often than usual. He sent me links to articles about saving and investing, to videos of men in suits explaining how foolish it was to let money sleep. He dropped little remarks into conversations. You know, Mom, if that money was in a different kind of account, you'd be earning so much more. You shouldn't have to worry about emergencies. If I handled things, we could plan for them. I just hate the thought of you being vulnerable, that's all. Vulnerable. Another word that made me uneasy. Olivia never called. When I saw her, it was when they swung by to take me to lunch once or twice, always somewhere too sleek, too loud, too expensive. She would sit with her phone beside her plate, screen face up, lifting it occasionally to scroll through whatever world she lived in when she wasn't with us. So, have you thought about Daniel's idea? She asked me once, between bites of some salad that looked more like a flower arrangement. Ideas? I said. He has many of those. She rolled her eyes. You know, the money, the accounts. It would really take a lot of stress off him if he didn't have to worry about you. I blinked. I didn't know he was worrying so much. Oh, he does, she said. He doesn't always show it, but he wants to make sure you're taken care of. And with, you know, the wedding and everything. And saving for the future, it would be good to have everything organized. Everything organized. Such a clean phrase for something that made my stomach ache. What exactly do you think needs organizing? I asked. She smiled, lips pressed too tightly together. Oh, I leave the details to Daniel, she said lightly. Money talk bores me to death. But I know he wants to do what's best. For all of us. For all of us. Another us that somehow included me, as long as I was willing to dissolve into it. I said no the first time. I appreciate your concern, I told Daniel over the phone. But I think I'll keep things as they are. Your father and I made a plan, and I'd like to stick to it. He was quiet for a second. Mum, honestly, it's a bit stubborn, he said finally. The world has changed. The rules are different now. You can't just leave money sitting around. I'm not leaving it lying on a park bench, I said. It's in the bank. It's safe there. Safe, he repeated, like the word tasted bad. Safe from what? From growing? From helping you? From easing things for me and Olivia? He stopped, as if realizing he'd gone too far. I didn't say no forever, I lied. I just said not now. I need more time. Time for what? He snapped, then sighed. Sorry, I want to know you're not exposed. Exposed. vulnerable, unsafe. I got off the phone feeling strangely exhausted. That night, I sat on the sofa with a blanket over my legs and stared at the muted television for an hour without really seeing anything. My husband's photo on the side table watched me with that mild, amused expression he always had, as if he found the world slightly ridiculous but forgivable. "What would you say?" I murmured to him. "Am I being stubborn? Or careful?" He didn't answer, of course. The dead are notoriously bad at giving advice. The second time, I didn't say no. I didn't say yes, either. I said something like, maybe we can look at it together, which, as I know now, was close enough. Daniel came over one Saturday with a laptop and a folder. He spread everything out on the kitchen table, moving my placemats aside like they were in the way of progress. He explained things, interest rates, inflation, investment options. I understood about half of what he said, and trusted the other half not because I found it convincing, but because I loved him. At one point, he opened my online banking on his laptop, with my permission, though I had to dig out the crumpled paper where I'd written the password. I watched him log in, watched my accounts appear on the screen. Numbers that represented decades of small sacrifices. "I can set up a transfer," he said. "We'll move a portion into an account I manage. We'll keep some there, so you feel safe. We can always adjust the amounts later." "How much is a portion?" I asked. He named a figure that made my chest tighten. "That's quite a lot," I said. "It's still less than half," he pointed out. "And it will grow, Mum. It won't just sit there rotting." Money doesn't rot, I thought. People do. I stared at the screen. The cursor blinked in the box where he could type in the transfer amount. He rested his fingers on the keys, waiting. "Trust me," he said quietly. So I did. Or I tried to. I nodded. "Fine," I whispered. "But it stays in your name and mine. Joint. Not just yours." "Of course," he said quickly. "Of course. I'd never," he stopped himself. "You're doing the right thing. For both of us." He typed. He clicked. The numbers shifted. It was just pixels moving on a screen, but it felt like something had been physically lifted out of my chest. When he left, he kissed my forehead and told me not to worry. He said he'd send me some documents to sign later, when you're ready. I slept badly that night. I dreamed of water, dark, deep water, with coins sinking slowly into it, glinting as they fell. The gift came 3 weeks later. Not to me, of course. To Olivia. Daniel sent me a message one afternoon, "Big surprise tonight. I'll show you tomorrow. You won't believe it." There was a smiley face at the end, which always looks oddly desperate coming from a grown man. I found out what the surprise was before he had a chance to show me. It was Olivia's Instagram, of all things. I don't have an account myself, but my neighbor's daughter sometimes shows me things on her phone. "Look at this," she said that evening, having come over to return a dish I'd lent her. "Isn't that your son's wife?" There she was on the screen, in a photo so glossy and staged it could have been an advertisement. Olivia, standing beside a new car. No, not just a car, some kind of luxury thing. Sleek and white and shining under showroom lights. She was holding up keys, her mouth open in an expression of exaggerated surprise. Daniel was in the background, slightly blurred, smiling at her with an expression that made my throat tight. Pride, relief, devotion. The caption read, "He said I deserved the world, so he started with this. My amazing husband. #blessed #luxury life #he knows my worth. My amazing husband." I felt as if someone had poured cold water down my back. "Wow," my neighbor's daughter said. "He must be doing really well, huh? Those things cost a fortune." I managed a small sound that might have been agreement and changed the subject. That night, I lay in bed staring at the ceiling. Numbers moved behind my eyes, my savings, the amount we had transferred, the approximate cost of the car I had seen. I wasn't an expert, but I wasn't an idiot. I could do rough math. In the morning, Daniel called. "Surprise," he said, not even waiting for me to say hello. His voice was bright, buoyant. "Did you see it? Please tell me you saw it." "I did," I said. My voice sounded calm to my own ears. "It's a very impressive car. She's been wanting one like that for ages," he said. "She's never had anything really hers, you know? Not at that level. And after everything with the wedding and the move and, well, she deserved something special." "I see," I said. And how did you afford something so special, with things being tight? He hesitated for just a fraction of a second. If I hadn't known him since he was a baby, I might have missed it. I told you, he said. I restructured some things, moved money around. It's manageable. We'll be fine. Daniel, I said quietly, did you use any of my savings for that car? He laughed too quickly. Mum, it's all just numbers on screens. Money is fluid. It's not like yours and mine in that strict sense. We're family. It's all part of the same pot in the end. The room went very still. I asked you a simple question. I said, yes or no. Did you use my money to buy that car? He was quiet. I could hear him breathing. You're overreacting, he said. I'm managing everything. Nothing's at risk. The car is an asset. It's not like I gambled it away in a casino. Answer me, I repeated. Yes, he snapped finally. Okay, yes. Some of it came from the account. But I'll replace it. You won't even notice. It's just for now. Just for now, I said. So Olivia could have a car that suits her lifestyle. It's not about lifestyle, he said. It's about appreciation. She puts up with so much. She supports me. She convinced you to ask me for joint access to money your father and I put aside over 40 years, I interrupted. So that you could appreciate her with it. His anger flared. Don't put this on her, he said sharply. This was my decision. I'm trying to balance everything. You don't understand how stressful it is. I understand that my savings, which were supposed to be my safety net, are now parked in your driveway. I said, that's not fair, he said. You have a house, a pension. You're not struggling. And you are? I asked. So much that you need your retired mother's money to buy luxury cars? There was a long silence. I'll put it back, he said finally, his voice lower. Over time, you won't lose anything. This is temporary. Temporary. Like youth. Like trust. We didn't talk long after that. I ended the call before my voice could crack. I sat very still at the kitchen table, my hands flat on the surface. The sun outside had shifted, casting a stripe of light across the floor. Dust motes drifted through it, turning slowly in the air. My son had stolen from me. I suppose some people would argue with that word. They would say, he borrowed. He misused. He made a mistake. But the truth is simple, he took something that was mine, that he had promised to protect, and used it for something else without my informed consent. He had taken my future comfort and turned it into his wife's Instagram content. The thing about being old, and I am old, no use pretending otherwise, is that people assume you will either explode or crumple when faced with betrayal. Cry, scream, collapse. But grief and anger settle differently when you've lived a long time. They don't erupt like fireworks. They sink like stones. For a few days, I moved through my routines as if underwater. Kettle, tea, garden, television, bed, but everything felt slightly askew, like a painting that had been knocked sideways on the wall. I didn't call Daniel. He sent a few messages, we need to talk about this calmly, I didn't mean to upset you, you're making this bigger than it is. I answered him with short phrases, I need time. I'm not ready to talk. What I needed was not time, not exactly. I needed to think. To decide what mattered more, keeping some version of peace with my son, or protecting what little independence I had left. On the fourth day, my grandson called me. Ethan is Daniel's son from his first marriage. He's 22, lanky, with a permanent air of someone who's just woken up from a very interesting dream. He didn't inherit his father's sharp edges. He moves through the world differently, slower, as if he's actually looking at things instead of past them. Hey, Gran, he said when I picked up. I could hear street noise in the background. You okay? I'm fine, I said automatically. How are you? Dad's been in a mood, he said. So I figured something's up. Did you two argue? I almost laughed. Leave it to Ethan to approach the problem sideways. Something like that, I said. How did you know? Because when he gets in his head about money, he starts stomping around the house like a wounded bear, Ethan said easily. And Olivia does this thing where she sighs loudly and scrolls on her phone even more than usual. It's a whole show. Despite myself, I smiled. Did he tell you what happened? I asked. No, Ethan said, but I asked him about your savings. Because he mentioned you'd let him handle things. And that sounded ominous. He brushed me off. So, I'm asking you. Did he screw up? The directness of his question surprised me. Perhaps I shouldn't have been surprised. Ethan has always had that combination of youth and bluntness that can slice through politeness. I'm not sure what I should tell you, I said carefully. It's between your father and me. With respect, he replied, if it involves your retirement money and him doing anything with it, it also involves me. Because when he crashes, guess who's the one picking up emotional pieces? Me. So, did he screw up? I took a breath. He used some of my savings to buy Olivia a very expensive car, I said. I kept my voice level. He says he'll pay it back over time. There was a long pause. I could hear footsteps, a car horn, a door closing somewhere near him. He did what? Ethan said finally. His voice had dropped, the way Daniel's had, but the tone was different. There was no defensiveness in it. Just anger and something like disbelief. It's all right, I said quickly, though it wasn't. I should have been more careful. I shouldn't have agreed to the joint account. I let it happen. No, Ethan said sharply. He's the one who did it. You trusted him. That's not a crime. I felt something warm and painful bloom behind my eyes. I blinked it back. I'll manage, I said. I still have some money in the original account. Not as much, but enough. And the house. Ethan was silent for a few seconds. Do you want it back? He asked. I hesitated. Of course I do, I said eventually. But I don't see how that's possible without ruining what's left of our relationship. If I make this into a war, I'll lose my son. And if you don't, Ethan said quietly, you'll lose your savings. And maybe respect for him too. He wasn't wrong. Listen, he continued. Can I come over? Just to talk? No pressure. I'll bring donuts. I know you pretend you don't like them, but you do. I don't pretend, I protested. They're too sweet. So you'll only eat 3, not 4, he said. I'll be there in an hour. Ethan arrived with a box of donuts and a backpack. He dropped both on the kitchen table and pulled me into a hug that smelled like cheap shampoo and bus seats. It was, unexpectedly, exactly what I needed. We sat at the table. He opened the box. I took a donut and broke it in half, the sugar sticking to my fingers. All right, tell me everything, he said, mouth half full. And don't leave out parts to protect Dad. I know his patterns better than he thinks. So I told him about the conversations, the opportunities, the transfers, the car. I tried to be fair, to include Daniel's arguments about investment and managing risk. Ethan listened without interrupting, only occasionally making a face when I mentioned certain phrases. When I finished, he leaned back, exhaled, and stared at the ceiling for a moment. Okay, he said. So, that's bad, but not irreversible. What do you mean? I asked. He sat up, wiping his hands on a napkin. Gran, I love my dad, but he has a blind spot the size of a continent when it comes to Olivia, he said. She says she deserves something, and he hears it as a test of his worth. So he does stupid things to prove himself. Like this. He's an adult, I said. He makes his own choices. Yeah, Ethan said, but you don't have to pay for those choices. Literally, I sighed. What can I do, realistically? I asked. The money's gone. The car is bought. He made the transfer with my permission. Even if I didn't know the whole picture. You can ask for it back, Ethan said simply. And if he says no? I asked. Then you still learn something important, he said. Where his priorities are. I looked at him. He met my gaze without flinching. You want me to confront him, I said. I want you to protect yourself, he corrected. Look, Gran, you've spent your whole life taking care of other people. Dad, Grandpa, me. It's his turn to take care of you. Not just say it. Actually do it. The words landed like a stone in my chest. I don't want to lose him, I said softly. Ethan's expression gentled. You won't lose him, he said. You might lose the illusion that he's someone different than who he is right now. But that's not the same. He reached into his backpack and pulled out a laptop. What are you doing? I asked. Checking something, he said. You told me you still have online access to your accounts, right? Yes, I said slowly. But he has it too. Sure, Ethan said. But it's your account, not his. You're allowed to see what's going on with your own money. He logged in with my credentials, which I reluctantly gave him, feeling both foolish and exposed. He navigated with ease. Young people move through digital spaces like they're walking down familiar streets. I still feel like I'm reading maps upside down. He pulled up the joint account Daniel had created. Okay, he said after a moment. Here it is. Here's the transfer out. And here, this must be the car payment. He turned the screen so I could see. A large sum had gone out to an auto dealership. The dates lined up. Is there any way? I began, then stopped. Any way to undo it? He finished. Not directly, but there is a way to remind him whose money it is. He clicked a few more times, frowning in concentration. You can't just take it back, I said sharply. That would make things worse. I'm not going to steal it, he said. I'm going to make sure he can't take any more without you knowing. For now, he showed me. There were settings for alerts, for dual authorization, for requiring both signatures for large transfers. Things my son had conveniently not mentioned. This should have been done from the start, Ethan said. If it's truly joint, both parties should approve movements above a certain amount. That's just basic fairness. He looked at me. Do you want to set that up? He asked. You don't have to, but if you do, I'll walk you through it. You'll get an alert every time he tries to move money. And if you don't confirm, it doesn't go. I thought about it. About trust. About control. About my husband's handwriting on the old statements. Yes, I said finally. Let's do that. We did. It took 20 minutes. There was something quietly empowering about clicking the boxes myself, about typing in confirmations, about deciding a threshold sum above which nothing could move without my approval. When we were done, Ethan closed the laptop and looked at me. Now, he said, comes the hard part. Which is, telling him, he said. And telling him you want the car money back. Daniel called before I had a chance to call him. Maybe he felt the shift. Maybe he got an automated email about the changed settings. Maybe he just knew that silences like the one between us can't last. Mom, he said, not bothering with small talk. Did you change something on the account? I set alerts and dual approval for large transfers, I said calmly. Yes. His exhale crackled in my ear. Why would you do that without telling me? He demanded. It's my account, I replied. I don't need your permission to adjust security settings on my own money. He was quiet for a second. This is about the car, isn't it? He said. This is about trust, I said. You asked me for it. I gave it. You used it in a way I wasn't fully aware of. So I'm adjusting. That's not fair, he said. It's not fair, I agreed. None of this is fair. But here we are. He was pacing, I could hear it in the rhythm of his breathing, the slight echo in his voice. You're making me out to be some kind of thief, he said. I'm making choices to protect myself, I said. I am 68 years old. I don't have decades to recover from financial mistakes. You do. You keep saying my money, he snapped. I'm your son. Who do you think will take care of you if something happens? Olivia and I are your family too. Are you? I asked quietly. Because right now it feels like my role in this family is to be an ATM. The line crackled. He didn't like that. That's harsh, he said. So is using my savings for a luxury car without telling me, I replied. He sighed, the sound long and put upon. What do you want, Mum? He asked. Just tell me what you want me to do. It was the question I'd been circling in my head for days. What did I want? To rewind time, to not have agreed to the joint account, to see my son as I used to see him, as someone incapable of hurting me like this. None of those were options. I want you to sell the car, I said. My voice surprised me with its firmness. Sell it, pay off whatever loan is attached to it, and return the portion of my money that you used. You can keep whatever portion you paid from your own earnings. But I want my savings back in my account. He laughed, disbelieving. You can't be serious, he said. I am, I answered. Very. You want me to tell my wife that we're selling her car because my mother changed her mind? He said. Do you have any idea how that will go over? I'm sure it will be difficult. I said. But that's your problem to solve, not mine. I didn't ask you to buy it. I certainly didn't ask you to buy it with my money. She'll think you hate her, he said. She can think whatever she wants, I said. I'm not having this conversation with Olivia. I'm having it with you. You're the one who took the money. You're the one who promised to take care of it. It's not that simple, he said. It is, I replied. You made a choice. Now you live with its consequences. That's what being an adult means. You taught me that often enough when I wouldn't let you borrow the car as a teenager. He groaned, the sound half frustrated, half desperate. You can't ask me to do this, he said. I can, I said. And I am. If you don't, then at least we'll both be clear about where we stand. He was quiet for a long moment. You're punishing me, he said finally. I'm protecting myself, I said again. There's a difference. We'll talk about this later, he said abruptly. I need to think. All right, I said. Think fast. Because until then, there will be no more transfers. Not a cent leaves that account without my approval. And I will not approve anything that isn't for my direct benefit. I ended the call before he could respond. My hands were trembling. I set the phone down carefully and took a few deep breaths. My heart pounded in my chest like it had when I used to run for the bus after a long shift at the hospital. I had just done something I never thought I'd do. I had drawn a clear, hard boundary with my son. It felt terrible. It felt necessary. The next few days were quiet. Too quiet. No calls from Daniel. No messages from Olivia. Even Ethan kept a bit of distance, perhaps sensing that I needed space to sit with what I'd said. I went through my routines, tea, garden, mild television, but my thoughts kept circling back to that phone call. Part of me worried that I had gone too far. Another part whispered that I had not gone far enough. On the third day, there was a knock at my door. I opened it to find Daniel standing there, looking like he hadn't slept properly in a while. His hair was messy, his shirt untucked. He used to be so meticulous about his appearance. Another thing that had shifted. Can I come in? He asked. Of course, I said, stepping aside. He walked into the living room and stood there, as if unsure whether to sit. Tea? I offered, because some habits are stronger than any argument. He nodded. We sat with mugs between our hands again. The way we had the day he first mentioned the accounts. Only this time, the silence between us was heavier, but clearer too. I talked to Olivia, he said eventually. I assumed you would, I said. She's not happy, he said with a humorless laugh. She feels humiliated, betrayed. She thinks you don't accept her. She said. He stopped himself. She said what? I asked. He hesitated, then apparently decided that if we'd come this far, honesty might as well continue. She said you're manipulating me. He said. Using guilt to control me. She said this is emotional blackmail. I took a sip of my tea. It tasted like nothing. And what do you think? I asked. He rubbed a hand over his face. I think this whole situation is a mess, he said. And I think I started it. I shouldn't have touched your savings without being upfront about what I planned to do. That was wrong. I blinked. He'd said it, the word. But I also think, he continued, that asking me to sell the car is extreme. It'll cause World War III in my house. You don't understand what she's like when she feels cornered. I may not, I said. But I understand what it's like to watch decades of careful saving disappear into something I never asked for. A car that isn't even practical for you, as far as I can tell. He made a face. It's not about practicality, he muttered. No, I said. It's about image. Hers. And, by extension, yours. He opened his mouth, then closed it again. I brought some papers, he said, changing tack. He reached into his bag and pulled out a folder. I did some calculations. If we don't sell the car, I can still commit to paying back what I used from your account within 5 years. Maybe 3 if I get a bonus. I'd sign an agreement. Make it official. He slid the folder across the table. Inside, there were printed spreadsheets, projections, even a simple contract he'd drawn up. It was all very neat, very grown up. Why should I trust you to honor this? I asked quietly. When you broke my trust to create this situation in the first place? He winced. Because I'm trying to fix it, he said. Maybe not in the way you want. But I am. Selling the car it would blow up my marriage. I'm not sure it could recover from that. And if that happens, guess who everyone will blame? You. I can live with being blamed for someone else's choices, I said. What I can't live with is losing my security because my son is afraid of an argument with his wife. He flinched, as if I'd struck him. That's not fair, he said weakly. I'm done worrying about being fair, I replied. I spent decades trying to be fair. To you, to your father, to everyone. Where has that gotten me, exactly? He didn't answer. We sat in silence for a moment. The clock in the hallway ticked loudly. I care about you, Mum, he said finally. I know I messed up. But I'm trying to make it right without destroying my life in the process. I looked at him, really looked at him. At the lines of stress on his forehead. The way he held his shoulders too tight, the desperation in his eyes. He was still my boy, somewhere under all that. The boy who used to bring me dandelions as if they were roses. The boy who cried when his first hamster died and asked if it had been scared. In that moment, a new thought slipped into my mind, quiet but clear. I could insist on the car being sold and probably win, at least morally. I could take him to court, if it came to that. The law would likely be on my side. But what would that victory cost me? Not just my relationship with him, but with Ethan, too, caught in the middle. With any future grandchildren. With the family that, despite everything, was still mine. I realized then that the real choice wasn't between my money and my son. It was between having absolute justice and having something I could live with. "Mom?" he said when I stayed quiet for too long. "Say something." I exhaled slowly. "All right," I said. "Here's what we're going to do." He straightened, wary. "You're going to keep the car," I said. His relief was immediate, visible, like air returning to a punctured balloon. "But you are also going to sign that agreement. And we're going to make it more robust." "Robust?" he repeated. "You will repay every cent taken from my savings over the next 5 years," I said. "With interest, if you can manage it. The schedule will be written down. We'll have a witness. If you miss even one payment without a very good reason, I mean hospital-level good, I will revoke your access to any of my accounts permanently and explore legal options. Do you understand?" He nodded slowly. "And in the meantime," I continued, "there will be no more transfers out of any account that has my name on it unless they are directly related to my needs. Groceries, bills, the house. Not family gifts, not investments I didn't approve. Nothing. That's over." He swallowed. "Okay," he said. "I can agree to that." "There's more," I said. "Of course there is," he muttered. "You will tell Olivia the truth," I said. "All of it. You will tell her that the car was partly paid for with my savings." "That I didn't know," that I objected. "You will tell her about the repayment plan. I will not be your secret villain, the monster mother-in-law who made you sell her car in some version of this story where I'm the problem. If she is going to resent me, she will at least resent me based on reality." He stared at me. "You're asking for a lot," he said. "I'm asking for honesty," I replied. "Something that should have been present from the beginning." He looked down at the folder again, then back at me. "Why are you compromising?" he asked quietly. "You could push this. You could force the sale. You know that, right?" "I do," I said. "But I'm not interested in destroying you to prove a point. I'm interested in you understanding the damage you've already done and choosing to repair it." He rubbed his face again, his hand trembling just a little now. "I don't deserve how patient you're being," he said. "No," I said softly. "You don't. But I'm not doing this because you deserve it. I'm doing it because I have to live with myself, too. And I don't want to become someone who only knows how to punish." We looked at each other for a long moment. "I'll bring the papers next week," he said. "We can go over them. Maybe have Ethan there. As a witness." I smiled faintly. "That would be wise," I said. He stood to go, then hesitated. "Mom?" he said. "Yes? Do you hate her?" he asked. "Olivia." I thought about it. About her sharp perfume and sharper smile. About her hunger for status, her careless mentions of poor people as if they were some distant, unfortunate species. "I don't hate her," I said. "I don't know her well enough to hate her. I don't like what she brings out in you. But that's not the same as hating her." He nodded, absorbing that. "I'll try to do better," he said. "I can't promise perfection, but I can promise effort. At our age," I said, "effort is all we can reasonably hope for from anyone." He laughed softly. When he left, the house felt both emptier and somehow lighter. Months passed. Daniel kept his word. The first repayment arrived in my account exactly on the date we'd agreed, with a note in the transfer description, "For Mum, installment 1. Each time another arrived, I felt a small, complicated twinge of both satisfaction and sadness. Satisfaction that he was holding himself accountable. Sadness that it was even necessary. He called a bit more often, too. Sometimes to ask about chores around the house, sometimes just to talk. Not always about money, sometimes about silly things, a show he'd watched. Something funny a colleague had said, the way Olivia had burned a roast but pretended it was experimental cuisine. Ethan visited regularly. We developed a little ritual. He'd bring donuts, I'd pretend to protest, we'd both eat too many. He brought his laptop less often, his presence shifting from emergency tech support to simply company. One afternoon, he helped me move some things in the attic. Old boxes, photographs, the detritus of a shared life now lived alone. "You ever think about selling the house?" he asked casually, brushing dust off his hands. "Sometimes," I said, "but then I remember that all my memories live in these walls. I'm not ready to move them yet." He nodded. "If you ever do, let it be your decision," he said. "Not Dad's. Or Olivia's. Promise me that." "I promise," I said. As for Olivia, she kept her distance. On the rare occasions we saw each other, at birthdays or holidays, she was polite in a way that felt rehearsed. She never mentioned the car in my presence. I never asked if she knew the full story. That was Daniel's responsibility now. Once, I saw her in the driveway of their house when I came to drop off a knitted jumper for Ethan. "Hello, Olivia," I said. She looked at me for a moment, something flickering in her eyes, guilt, defensiveness, I couldn't say. "Margaret," she replied. "You look well." "So do you," I lied. She looked thinner, more drawn. Luxury can be a heavy thing to carry. As I turned to go, she said, quickly, "For what it's worth, I didn't ask him to do what he did. With your money." I didn't know. Not then. I stopped, looked back at her. "I believe you," I said. "But you knew afterwards. And you kept the car." She flinched, just slightly. "People do strange things," she said. "When they're afraid. So do people who are comfortable," I replied. "Enjoy your day, Olivia." I got into my bus and left her standing there, keys dangling from her manicured hand. It's been almost 2 years now since all of this started. Daniel has made most of the repayments. There is still some left, but not so much that it keeps me awake at night. My accounts look, if not exactly as they did before, then at least less wounded. The car is still there. I see it sometimes when I pass their street. It gleams in the sun, a symbol of so many things at once: vanity, insecurity, love expressed badly. Money turned into metal. My relationship with my son is different now. Not broken, but changed. There's a layer of something between us that wasn't there before, not quite distrust. But not full trust either. A knowledge that he is both the boy who used to hold my hand crossing the street and the man who once valued his wife's deserving more than my security. We're learning each other again, as adults who have both made mistakes. As for me, I am learning myself again, too. It turns out that even in your late 60s, you can discover new facets of who you are. I always thought of myself as patient, accommodating, a follower of the path of least resistance. But when pushed hard enough, I found a spine I didn't know I still had. If you're waiting for some dramatic ending, where he sells the car in a burst of remorse or she leaves him and he comes back to my house humbled, you'll be disappointed. Life, in my experience, rarely wraps itself up with such satisfying symmetry. Instead, life goes on. I still wake up, put the kettle on, look out at the garden. The apple tree still stands, tired but stubborn. Some mornings I see Ethan's message pop up on my phone, "You up?" I'm bringing donuts. Some evenings Daniel calls just to ask how my day was, and we talk about nothing important for 15 minutes. Sometimes that nothing feels more healing than any apology. I haven't forgiven him completely. Not yet. Forgiveness, I've learned, isn't a switch you flip. It's more like a bruise that slowly fades. Some days it still hurts when I think about it, other days, it's just a shadow. What I have done is made peace with my choice. I chose not to burn everything down to prove I'd been wronged. I chose to protect myself without destroying him. I chose to demand respect for the value of my life's work, the quiet, unseen work of saving, planning, holding a family together, without pretending that money is the only way that value is measured. If there is a moral here, and people like to find morals in stories told by old women, it is this. Love does not mean handing over everything you've built just because someone shares your blood. Trust is not a blank check. And boundaries, even when drawn late in life, are not acts of cruelty. They are acts of self-respect. My son stole from me, yes. But in confronting that theft, I took something back that I had been giving away too freely for years, the right to say, "This is mine." I worked for it. I decide what happens to it. Not just my money, my time, my home, my peace. I used to think that getting old meant shrinking, your world, your options, your power. Now I see that sometimes, if you're willing to face painful truths, it can also mean finally claiming space you were too soft, too busy, or too scared to claim before. So, I sit by my window, watching the birds pick at the feeder my husband made, and I feel both older and, strangely, a little more solid than I did the day all this began. My son is learning. I am learning. The world outside goes on turning. And my savings? They're back where they belong. Not so I can hoard them until my last breath, but so that when I spend them, on a new roof, on a small trip, on a silly expensive coat I don't really need, I know that I am spending my life's work in a way I chose myself. That, at this age, is worth more to me than any shiny car on anyone's driveway.